India, well over 50% of the individuals are engaged entirely in food production. This means that they cannot do other things, such as make things and provide services. So one of the problems with a country that is still in subsistence agriculture is they can't make the leap into a modern society because they don't have the people to do it. Because in our society, less than 5% of the people are employed in growing food, and the other 95% can therefore lead productive lives in making goods and providing other services. And that is what is necessary for a modern society to exist. And so therefore, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with support of Warren Buffett, for example, are very clearly focused on this. They understand it. And Bill Gates doesn't care whether Greenpeace doesn't like genetic modification or nuclear energy. He gets it. And he sees that the mechanization of agriculture and bringing modern agriculture to Africa is one of the keys to improving their standard of living. They need electricity, and they need to mechanize their agriculture, and that they need to put some hydro dams on the Congo, and they need to come, into this century. And therefore, population growth will end. Because when you mechanize agriculture, children are no longer an asset for labor. They become, in fact, a liability or a cost center, and therefore people automatically have smaller families. Besides, most of the people move into urban environments where the women get educated and become in the workforce and become empowered politically and automatically take control of their own reproductive destinies and have smaller families. And even the women living on the mechanized farms now are in a modern society, and there's going to be a town center somewhere where there's a mall they can go to and go to movies and see plays, and they have satellite TV, so they're plugged into the world, and they get educated, and they're not barefoot and pregnant their whole lives and uneducated like they are in subsistence economies. It's as simple as that. And yet, the environmental movement, of course, has this leftish, romantic vision of everybody living in little huts with their little vegetable patch that they dutifully hoe the weeds every morning or whatever, It's a complete fantasy. It's a recipe for a 30-year average lifespan, like it was before we got medicine and mechanization and technology. But that's their fantasy, is this sort of back to the land, that cities are actually evil, when in fact cities are actually the answer, because it gets the people off the land, and you can have more national parks. And if you use mechanized agriculture and modern agricultural techniques, you grow 5 times as much food per area of land, and therefore you don't need as much land to grow the food for more people, and you can leave some of nature alone. And this all comes down in the end to how much of the Earth's natural environment are we going to second for making a factory for growing food and producing energy and fiber for clothing and wood for building. How much of the Earth's land, surface, and sea are we going to take over, and how much are we going to let be like nature? And so land use planning on a global scale and marine use planning, it's one place where I have a lot of time for the environmental movement's thrust on marine issues, is the idea of marine protected areas. Now, it's a big argument within the fishing and marine community, but I personally believe that in the same way that it's a good idea to, say, take 10, 20% of the land and make it into national parks, wilderness areas, reserves, whatever you want to call them, where you don't have commercial activity on a large scale. I think that's a good idea in the ocean as well, to have certain reefs set aside for breeding, etc. And there's so much, the marine side of things, in terms of sustainability, there's so much we can do in the future with aquaculture and artificial reefs and stuff like this. It's a huge potential, and not being tapped, because again, it's this hands-off sort of approach by one side, or this exploitation approach by the other side. And as I try to explain in my book, we have to find the medium sustainability where we balance the environmental, social, and economic factors. But the mechanization of agriculture is the way we stop population growth.
Well understood. I have an area that has to do with marine life and the oceans that very much disturbs me. And that is that I found out last year that the Navy has the right to destroy through testing, military tests in the ocean of 5 million animals. They have the right to do this over the next 5 years. It's already contracted and there's no stopping it. So very much similar to the weapons testing of China and Russia and the United States, the tests that sent all the radioactive energy into the environment. We also have a Navy that is doing war experiments in the oceans. This has to affect reefs and has to affect marine life and has to affect what's going on in the oceans as well. That seems out of our hands to be able to do anything about. But it's very disturbing. It's something that goes on. It's something that nobody can stop. What do you think about that?
Well, are you talking about acoustic device?
No, I'm talking about literally war experiments. I will send you the document.
I'd very much like to see that. But as you know, the military often has carte blanche because it's national security.
Of course.
And it's top secret and all of that. And one of the great achievements of society was to end atmospheric nuclear testing. And Greenpeace came in after the fact on that, except for France was still doing it. And, Russia and the United States and Britain had stopped atmospheric nuclear testing in the 60s with the Limited Test Ban Treaty. But France and China, and then India and Pakistan, continued to employ well, I don't know if Pakistan did have an whether that was underground or not, but I do know for a fact that China and France continued to conduct atmospheric nuclear tests long after the United States, Russia, and Britain stopped. And our second campaign in Greenpeace was to take on the French atmospheric nuclear tests in French Polynesia at the Mururoa Atoll, which we succeeded in driving them underground after just 2 years of campaigning. So that was a great success on Greenpeace's part, and they've never really got the credit that they were due for our early years of work. We stopped the U.S. underground hydrogen bomb test in Alaska. We stopped the French atmospheric nuclear tests in the South Pacific, and then we saved the whales. So it was incredible what was accomplished in those few years.
There's still war experiments going on, only it may not be in the air and on the land, but it's in the sea. We can't stop the Navy. They run a lot of things, more things than people think they do, but it's still there. It's still in the mix. So it's just a very, very sad thing. I would like to invite you back to talk with us about cause and correlation. I want to talk more about GMO foods with you, fish farming. I want to talk about forestry and deforestation and confusion around there. And of course, I want to talk about our beloved dolphins, whales, and seals and what's going on and what you've done and what you're proposing. And I really want to thank you for joining us today in part one. Patrick Moore, the author of Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout, The Making of a Sensible Environmentalist, and Trees Are the Answer. Thank you for being on the show today, Patrick.
Thanks very much, Kim. And next time we'll talk a little more about why nuclear is the future of energy for the world.
Thank you so much.